Alright guys, so we have a printer from Weedo. It's called the Heph-i3 or maybe Heph-i3. It does come in this box, which is not very large and very unmarked. There's no markings at it at all or on it. So I went ahead and cut the tape, so let's go ahead and open it up. And this is what we see on top. So we do have an installation guide, which is just printed paper with lots of step-by-step instructions, looks like. And yeah, just looking at this, it looks like there's going to be quite a bit of involvement. So this should be pretty fun, as it does look like it's a kit kind of printer. All right, so we do have foam that's soft and it's also formed. And this is what we see on top. So I'm just gonna pull out the pieces, guys. A channel here, looks like maybe the upper frame piece, and it's got an LED light on it. Well, that's pretty cool. Another 20 by 20 channel, and this looks like the X-axis where everything's gonna connect to. Our direct drive extruder mechanism here with the frame part and everything. So they do have some things assembled, as you can see, and this is our hot end. Looks quite interesting also. And it's tethered. And also we do have a leveling sensor there. So yeah, looks like we do have some kind of out of bed leveling. So let's go ahead and pull this layer out. And this is where our base of the printer is nestled. So yeah, great packaging. So this is what it looks like, and actually it's pretty interesting. It does have a Ender 3 kind of feel to it. Pretty low profile, I like that. And also comes with, looks like a flexible, yeah it is, metal build plate. Wow, that's cool. So on the bottom we have the rest of our pieces here. We got the lead screw. This looking thing, it might be a little trim or something. Spool holder comprises of 2 pieces, and it's quite simple. You just take the nut off and put them together just like this. Our 2 horizontal channels for each side, and one of them does have holes. Our idler bracket for the other side of the Z-axis. The belt with the tensioner, and this is for the X-axis. A bracket with an end-stop switch, and we'll have to see where this goes. Our Z-axis motor with the coupler already connected to it. And by the way, that's the brand of the motors. We get a spatula that's not sharpened. So here we have a bag of some cables, US power cord, a USB cable to connect from the printer to the computer, some wrenches, zip ties, micro SD card to USB adapter, and the SD card is in there also. Some Allen wrenches, so yeah, just a bunch of little things. And we'll open this up in a second. And also we get some hardware with more zip ties. And there are 2 more things in there, which are, looks like some kind of test printouts. And I guess they throw them in there for fun. That is everything for the box, guys. So everything was packed pretty well. So let's go ahead and move this out of the way, and we'll bring the printer in. I'm gonna clean up here a bit and we'll start putting it together. All right, so I got everything organized there on the table. You guys probably can't see all of it, but yeah, let's go ahead and open this bag here. So we got the power cord, our USB cable. So you're gonna use this to connect from the printer to the computer. Some cutters, which is really nice. These things are very useful for cutting the filament on an angle. We get quite a few zip ties, which could be helpful to tidy things up. 8 gig SD card marked scan disk, and also an adapter to USB. 2 double-ended wrenches, 7 and a 5.5, 10 and an 8, and also a set of Allen wrenches. All right, so the first thing we want to do is maybe cut these zip ties. I'll flip it around here. So it's kind of bunching up all the wires here. So just gonna cut them loose and yeah, kind of see where everything's going. But yeah, as hard as it looks to put together, it's actually not gonna be too bad. While we're under here, maybe we should take this cover off here and see what kind of electronics we have underneath. But our power supply is right here. Yeah, let's go ahead real quickly here and take this cover off. A ton of bolts to take out, 10 to be exact, just for this bottom lid here. All right, let's see. Okay. So yeah, seemed like a little overkill on the bolts, but in any case. So using a different camera here to look at it a little closer. So yeah, everything looks pretty good here. And also to note that this screen on the bottom, you guys can see here, is on this board also. So this board is kind of like everything in one. But I don't know if you guys can see, it does have an ARM processor, and the stepper drivers are integrated, but they do have little heat sinks, so that's nice to see. But yeah, very clean board, nothing too complicated here, pretty simple overall. And we do have a little fan there in the back that cools everything off. So I'm going to put the cover back on, and we'll start with the assembly. All right, so we got the cover back on. Let's go ahead and flip it around. And we'll get to the installation, guys, but first thing you want to do before you do anything is check your frame. Make sure it's not wobbling, and mine appears to be pretty good here. So sometimes these printers, they'll come in a little crooked, and so you have to adjust it, and the way you do that, I'll loosen these bolts here on each side of the frame, and then it'll be able to flex back and forth just in case your printer is not sitting flat. Actually, I just realized mine's not sitting flat, yeah. So it does have play on it. You do have to have a really flat table, so yeah, I do have play, okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and release these larger bolts here on the side. Actually, they were not very tight at all. And also on this side. Yeah, everything is actually very loose, guys. So we're definitely gonna have to go and check everything. So yeah, now it fell into place and it's not wobbling anymore. If you're on a flat table and it's straightened out, now we can go ahead and tighten those bolts and it's gonna lock it into this position. So, and you definitely wanna do this now. So later as we build up, you know, everything's already nice and flat on the bottom. Now another thing you wanna look at is this Y-axis rail here. So the way this printer is made is actually quite clever because it connects to this part here, so it's not going to wobble. But there is a bolt right underneath here that we can go ahead and check. Make sure it's tight. Okay, yeah, so mine wasn't super tight, so we can go ahead and tighten it up. And actually, guys, if we slide it to the very front, you can kind of see them both here. So there's two. So I tightened this one up already. And go ahead and tighten this one up. Okay, so that one was actually pretty tight. So yeah, that should be good there. So the next thing I like to do is check the rollers on the bed. And let's go ahead and remove this build plate. So I don't know how well you guys would be able to see, but under there are, well, let's see, if we go to the very front, you can see a little better maybe. But there are rollers here. So there's two on one side and two on the other. So these are stationary. And the ones on the other side are adjustable. It's kind of funny how they put the adjustable ones on this side where it's harder to get to because there is an opening on the other side. But also they didn't provide any of the wrenches that could even fit that eccentric nut. So on mine here, it looks like they've already adjusted it. And I think maybe that's their whole plan, is to go ahead and factory adjust it. But honestly, I think it's a little bit too tight on mine. So, and on top of that, the rollers are greased up pretty hard. So it's a pretty messy adjustment there. You'll probably be fine as long as you don't have any wobble here. But you know, if you want to get it more correct, you can turn those eccentric nuts and the wheels will come closer or farther away and you can adjust it to more closer tolerances. So mostly here you're just trying to make sure that it's not too tight. And also, guys, as a note, you don't want to move this bed too fast back and forth because you can burn out the drivers, because as you move it, this motor is generating power and sending it back. So yeah, just whenever you move it, you know, be pretty slow with it. Don't go super fast. All right, so I think we finally got to the part where we can look at the manual. So this is going to be a little bit harder to follow because the nature of the instructions here, they're a little bit confusing and the pictures are not great because they're actual pictures. All right, so for step one, looks like what we need to do is grab the two main channels here that are going to go vertical, and we're going to affix them here to the base. Now, one of the channels, it's just plain, and that's going to go on the side away from the lead screw, which should be on the right side here. So, and then with the one with the little holes, the threads goes down like this on the left side here, and then our Z-axis motor will eventually mount to those little holes there. So now we just need to find our bolts, kind of random bolts, I guess, but it's probably these long ones, and there should be 4 of them. Again, the one that looks the same everywhere goes on the right side. So the bolt just literally goes through the bottom. Then we're going to start it on the channel. I'm going to go ahead and use this spool holder to prop it up. All right, so we started one, let's start the other. And on these guys, you don't want to tighten them up yet, just snug them up where they kind of go flat, but you want it to still move around. So, and the reason for that is because you want it to kind of naturally go to where it wants to go when we put all the pieces together. So let's flip it around and go to the other side. So yeah, with this one, you just want to make sure that your threads are towards the bottom, not the top, like this. And we'll do the same thing here. So yeah, again, leave it loose. And that is it for step one. All right, so it looks like step 2 is actually attaching the same thing we just did. So again, these instructions are really hard to follow. So let's see what step 3 is all about. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. We'll connect the Z-axis motor to this channel here on the back of it. Hopefully you guys can see. We're at the back now, and this is where our power switch is here. We're gonna grab our Z-axis motor, and it's literally gonna sit right here. So you're gonna really need to know your bolt sizes. They say M416, that's these longer ones. And there should be 2 of them, which actually there's more than 2, there's 4. But yeah, the bolts just go through here. The frame, there's 2 holes. Seems like the coupler's in the way. If you have to, you can take the coupler off, but I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze them in there like this, and just by running them down. There we go. I'm gonna attach it to this channel. Okay, so the coupler is in my way. I'm gonna go ahead and take it off because I can't get that bolt started for some reason. There we go. But yeah, pretty much that's how it goes on. Just kind of make sure it's sitting pretty flat and everything's happy. We can go ahead and tighten these up snugly. And that's it. All we gotta do now is put our coupler back on. So there's no particular way this thing goes on. There is a flat part on the shaft, but that doesn't really matter on this kind of coupler. So you don't want to go all the way in, obviously. If you guys look, there's a little step there on the inside. You want to be just below that step because that's where the lead screw is going to sit in. So just put the shaft a little bit lower than that step and tighten it up. And so that is step 3. So for step 4, they want us to find the wire for the Z limit switch. Maybe our Z switch is on the top, not the bottom, because they're talking about passing the wire with the LED here, light for the top, together with the Z limit switch. So here we have the plug that says Z, the smaller one. That's going to be for our in-stop switch. And I bet you this is what this is for. So looking at the printer here from the back, we're going to tuck this Z limit switch inside the channel here, just like that, all the way to the top. The limit switch is going up inside the channel, and then our LED strip with the frame, and that's going to run in the channel down with the Z-axis switch. And I bet you guys that this little strip here is the thing that holds it all together. I will have to say this is definitely not a easy part of the assembly, and a little frustrating maybe. All right, so it's working. And you do have to have your wires in there pretty deep, or this little cover won't slide over. But it is working. You guys can maybe see. We are heading down. And so our LED wire, we're going to feed it down in there, and then we can grab it from underneath. And we've made it all the way down. So I would say somewhat a success. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple bolts that go on the top. And the reason for that is on the manual, they want us to go down and connect the wires. But I feel like this channel is going to be jumping all over the place, so I'm just going to start it here, because we will have to take it back off to roll on all our X-axis components. But yeah, it looks like the next part is we're going to roll on our extruder assembly on one side, and then I guess that would be the left side, and on the right side we'll be rolling on the idler pulley. Then after that, we should be able to put the top bar on. Yeah, a little confusing here, guys, but we'll figure it out. Normally we'd have our lead screw already in, and we'll set it there into the coupler, and now we can go ahead and tighten it. So now we can get to this part here, and we're just gonna literally roll it on there. So there's rollers here, and you guys can see the brass bushing, and that's where the lead screw is gonna go through. Okay, so I just realized that this frame needs to, yeah, I have to feed the frame through here because of that light. And actually, I can't even get it through there, guys. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and unstick this light because it's not really working out being on the channel. So hopefully yours is not on the channel, because that's giving me more trouble than it needs to. So with the extruder going to the back, basically like this, we're looking at the side of the printer here with the lead screw. So we're going to feed this light, LED light, through the rollers here. Also need to feed the little wire for the Z-axis and stop switch through the same place. And then we're going to simply just roll it onto the channel, and at the same time feed our lead screw through the brass bushing on the top. So yeah, I apologize guys, it's very hard to see everything, but you guys can see I can go ahead and turn it, and the lead screw here is coming out the top, and the rollers are now rolling on this channel. So yeah, they made it really difficult with these lightings. Now we can go ahead and put this channel on, and that simply sits like this, and you guys can see the wallowed out parts go to the top. So we're going to set it on there. Make sure you're not pinching any wires, and grab our bolts. So they're the larger ones. So we totally forgot about the idler pulley, which goes on the other side. So let's take this back off. And the way this goes, let's go ahead and look at the front again so you're not too confused. But yeah, looking at the front, we look at the idler. So this part is the back, and the smoother part is the front, and the two wheels go like this. So it's literally going to roll on just like that. So there we go. Now we can go ahead and put this piece back on. So a little confusing for sure how they get you to assemble this thing, because a lot of times you would have your X-axis all built out already, and then you know, kind of connect all these pieces together. But I think what they want you to do here is do the X-axis last, because that'll give you a more precise distance between the two rails. But yeah, let's put these large bolts in here. Again, make sure you're not pinching the wires there. Be careful with that. Last thing you want is a short. Grab the larger wrench and run them down. You could tighten all this up, and you should be fine either way, but I'm gonna go ahead and still leave it all loose, meaning like don't tighten it yet, just kind of snug it. Yeah, the idea here is to have everything moving until everything's assembled, and then we can tighten it all up. That gives us the best chance of, you know, kind of having all the parts fit together more comfortably than kind of stressing them all to where they need to go. So all right, so we're making pretty good progress here. We got the hot end over here, goes something like this, but we need to grab our X-axis channel. Now, the way this thing goes, it's not too hard to figure out. So the back of it here, you can see there's two wallowed out big spots, and those are actually going to land around these two bolts here. So here and here. So it's pretty simple. And the two little threads on each side, or the holes, I guess, they're not threads, they're holes. Those are going to go to that side. So yeah, literally just like this. That's how it goes. Before you can put this together, there's quite a few parts that need to kind of combine. Now the part that we need to go ahead and do before we do anything else is grab this idler pulley with the belt. So mine already had the belt through it, so if yours is not, go around the pulley there with the teeth going down. And actually what we're going to do is we're going to put the belt inside the channel. You guys can see that maybe, literally just like that. And so once you got your belt in there, grab the hot end assembly. Make sure you're not tangled and it's happy to sit upright like this. And what we're going to do is we're literally going to roll the hot end onto the channel. So this could be a little tricky, but yeah, you're just going to literally roll on top of the belt onto the channel. So just like that. So yeah, hopefully that made sense, guys. So the belt is underneath these two little wheels and it goes all around. So on the side of the tensioner, you can go ahead and put it over these little tabs here where the belt holds onto. This one's going to go around and then connect to here. But you don't want to connect it on this side yet because we have to go around the pulley here. So we're going to feed it through there, around the little gear, and then it's going to come back. So yeah, it's all kind of fiddly, to be honest, guys. And the belt is pre-tensioned already, or pre-linked, and hopefully it all works out here. But yeah, something like that. So hopefully I'm doing this in the right order, guys. So we're going to need those longer bolts we used earlier for the Z-axis motor. And they're going to go in here. And there should be threads on the other side that it tightens onto. All right, sure enough, it grabbed. Put the other one in. All right, so we're tight there, but how do we tighten the other side? Well, we got to flip it around. And you're also going to need these little track nuts. So they kind of slide into the track. So this could get a little tricky. Again, everything about this printer assembly is a little tricky. So yeah, it looks like we probably need to take the belt back off where we can slide these guys in. So we're literally going to push one of them all the way over here somewhere. And then the other one's going to be somewhere here. So yeah, this is all kind of tricky to line up because we have to line up this idler pulley also. So yeah, like the bracket and the idler pulley all have to line up. We're going to grab a little bolt and hopefully start it. All right, and that one will go here. Make sure it lines up with your little nut. So if it all looks good, you can go ahead and tighten this one up. I'm going to go ahead and put my belt back on to make sure that we're all good with the tightening. It's definitely a tight fit, looks like. All right, so I realized something, guys. They put on this bracket the wrong way. It should be like this, and you should be adjusting it or tightening it on the other end, not on the back end, obviously. So we can go ahead and put the bolt that goes through the frame here back in there. Because of these, it doesn't even go through there. So I can't just pull it out and flip it around. The only way to get them out is I have to pull this longer bolt out, which is not a big deal. Just gonna have to be careful not to lose all these parts. We got the little idler pulley lap. Just gotta make sure that this part, the longer part, goes to the front and reassemble it all. We do have quite a few spacers here, including the pulley too. Now we are good. Now we're going to the front of the rail. And there we go. So yeah, simple as that. Put our knob back on and we are good. So now we just have to permanently attach it here. And you guys can see there's two bolts or holes. So we're going to use the same hardware we used earlier. Looks pretty good right there. Snug them up. Now we can connect our belts back to the hot end. All right, so we finally figured that out. The belts are on. Pretty good tightness. Traveling good on the pulleys. So yeah, I wouldn't say this was easy, but you know, needed a little bit of adjustment here and there. All right, so we went through quite a few steps already. 9, 10, 11, all the way to 14 here, if you're following along. 16 is actually putting the lead screw in back here, which we already did. And 17 is tightening the coupler to the lead screw. And then for 18, we have the bracket with the Z-axis end-stop switch, which this is what it looks like. It has the switch on it. So we are going to use the same kind of slide through nuts and a couple bolts. And if you guys can see here, this is where they're going to go. So we're going to need to pop out this end cap, then slide in our nuts there. Get them close and lined up. So there's two holes here that the bolts will go through into the nuts. And then this wallowed out part is where the screw will go through. So something like this basically. So if you have to, you know, get another Allen wrench there and push it around. But yeah, basically just lining them up there as close as possible. And then what you want to do is you want to center the lead screw through the hole here on the top. All right, now just gonna snug up those bolts. And that should be good right there. And while we're over here, I guess we can go ahead and plug it in. So we got this wire here that was sticking out that we routed. And it does say a Z on it. So let's go ahead and stick this LED back on here since we're good now. And so our wires are all nicely tucked underneath or on the side here, and everything is nicely organized. And so that was 18 and 19. For 20, we're going to be installing the spool holder. Forgot to put this little cover back on, so we can go ahead and do that. It covers up the sharp edges so you don't cut yourself by accident. So the spool holder comprises of these two parts, and the round part here is actually metal or aluminum, so that's nice to see. But yeah, one end has two nuts, and we're going to unscrew one of them. So we're going to install the round part this way on the nice flat side, and then our nut will go on the other end, and we can just spin this to tighten it up, snug this up, and that's it. And this is where our spool will sit and roll on. And if you have to, you can adjust this wider if you need it, but should be able to fit all the most common spools on here. And it does mount here on the top. So if you guys notice, our feed is through the back. That's where it goes in. So the spool will sit something like this. So what you do is you line up the middle of the spool holder to the inlet here. So whatever the middle is or close to it is where you want to fixate it. And the way it mounts is with some bolts and T-nuts. There's a couple of holes, so we're going to put the bolts through that. And then we're going to start the T-nut in this position here, or orientation. And there's two of them, so yeah, that's what it looks like. And the way T-nuts work is they'll go into the channel, and then when you turn them, the nut should churn and lock in. So lining up with the channel, we're just going to drop them in there. Again, remember to line this up about center. So with the T-nuts, what you want to do is make sure you're centered up on the channel, because if they're, one side or the other, it's going to kind of bind. Try to be as center as possible, and then just start tightening it. Now you might have to loosen it and then tighten it again. So that one grabbed. So if it doesn't grab, just loosen it and then tighten it again, and make sure you're centered up so the T-nut can turn and then lock in. And that's our spool holder here. So the spool will go on here, and our filament will feed right to the back here. Now we probably should have already tightened all of our bolts that we left loose. And so before we do anything else, let's go ahead and do that, since most of our frame is built. Now the reason I wait till everything is built before tightening anything is because we can move whole Z-axis up, and that way we can have a nice distance, or the correct distance, between the two channels here on each side. And now we can go ahead and tighten those bolts, and we'll do the same thing for the bottom. We'll lower this to the very bottom and then tighten the bolts underneath. So that just ensures that we got the right distance between both sides, and there's not going to be binding as it goes up or down, or being too loose or start binding. So it's going to be exactly the same distance on the bottom and the top as it travels through the whole axis. And now we're going to drop this down to the very bottom. Now we can go ahead and tighten the bolts underneath the printer that hold this main channel. And these you also want to snug up pretty well, as this is the only thing that's holding the upper portion of the printer. All right, let's do the other side. All right, so now we have a really solid frame on the printer. So go ahead and check, make sure you're still level. So we're feeling really good here, and everything seems to be nice and squared out. So overall, the build is going good so far, and I think we're getting pretty close to the end as far as assembly goes. So for 21, we need to install the Ptfe tubing, and then 22 is plugging everything in, and then 23 is checking our voltage, which is quite important. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys, for the assembly. So let's go ahead and plug the rest of our parts in. So we have the Ptfe tubing here, which is not plugged in into the hot end. So let's go ahead and do that. So all we gotta do is just insert it. Just like that. That should be good. I wish they would have included some kind of clips for these couplers, but we'll see if that's an issue. Might have to print some out. And it's just a little wedge that goes between the black piece here and the metal part of the coupler. It kind of keeps them apart so the tube doesn't slide in and out. The other end of the Ptfe tubing goes right here in this coupler. So yeah, same way, we're just going to insert it just like that. That should hold it right there. Yeah, so there's a bunch of wires here. Actually, let's go to the bottom first, because I think we haven't plugged in. Okay, yeah. So under here, you can maybe see our plug here to the, can't remember, either LED or the end stop switch, or maybe it's for both, but yeah, I think it was the LED. But in any case, you got to plug this in under here, just like that. So the wires do kind of travel, underneath the printer, but it should be fine because it does sit on these 4 squishy feet. So yeah, going back to the side here, we have a pack of wires that all kind of go up, and so these are all going to go up here. So let's just go ahead and plug this one in, which is the Z-axis motor plug, and it does have a little Z on it, and it literally plugs right here. And now we'll go to these. So there's a large one here that'll plug here, so that's pretty straightforward, and it locks in. So they are all labeled. We got 2 smaller and 1 larger, which is the motor, so that's X. So this is our X motor here, and it does plug from underneath. So we got that. So here we have a smaller one that says X on it, and that's actually for the end stop on the X here. Maybe you guys can see or not, but the switch is right there, and it plugs in from underneath like that. And so that's all our wires here So our bed is already connected. So going to the very back, we do have one more switch we need to connect here, and it's the Y-axis end stop switch, also on the bottom there. And believe it or not, guys, that is all of our wiring. Now, what's quite important is back here, right next to the Y-axis switch that we just plugged, there's a little switch here for the power supply, and that's your voltage selection. So you got a 230 or a 115 selection. So depending on where you live, you need to set that voltage correctly. So mine is set on 115 volts right now. And definitely don't forget to do that, because if you do, you could damage the printer. All right, so since we're pretty close to finish here, there is one thing that we need to do that we haven't done yet, and that is check all of our belts and rollers, make sure everything is good. So the belt on the Y-axis seems good. It is a little close to one side, but it's not rubbing it, just close. We already worked on our X-axis, so that's good there. Another thing that we need to check is all of our rollers. So we got kind of like triangle rollers here, 2 on the outside and 1 on the inside. So these are not as crucial as long as they're not too loose or too tight. Even if they're a little tighter, it's fine. That one's perfect, but this side here is a little bit too tight. So there's eccentric nuts on the inside rollers. You guys can't see this one. Yeah, I'm gonna try to loosen this one up just a little bit. All right, that's good right there. It's a little bit looser, so you don't want it to be too loose. You'd rather be a little tight than loose for the Z-axis. Now, the one that you do want to be kind of loose on, let's raise this up a bit, is on the X-axis rollers here. And so mine are very tight right now, so we need to loosen that. So there's a eccentric nut down here that we're gonna turn to loosen it just a little bit. There we go. And so now I can spin the rollers a lot easier, and we still have no wobble. So the idea here is to have enough pressure where you can still spin the rollers pretty easy, indicating, you know, there's not a crazy amount of pressure pushing on the channel, but not too loose where it wobbles. So if you get it just at the right moderate pressure, you're gonna have really smooth travel. So that's the whole idea here. And you guys saw how we adjusted the bed earlier. That's good there. So yeah, all the belts are running good. The rollers are all good. Everything is looking really good, and that theoretically completes our installation or assembly. So let's go ahead and grab our build plate, which is a flexible sheet. And this is metal magnetic to this mat here, which is a magnet. And simply just gonna fall into place like that. So whenever you're done printing, you can just pull off your prints, flex the sheet, and the prints will pop off. So I really like this design. It's simple, but very effective and convenient. All right, guys, so this is what the printer looks like on the desk. It's not too big, so it's a medium format, kind of like the Ender 3. It does look pretty interesting, and at the same time, pretty generic too. So let's start here on the top. We have the spool holder. I definitely like that it's all metal, even this part here. We got 2020 rail on top. We got the LED underneath, 2040s on the Z-axis, and the 2020 on the X-axis. So a pretty typical design there. Flipping it around, we can see what the back looks like. Not too much here. Our end stop switch is on the top, which is interesting. So every time it homes, it's gonna go all the way to the top, which I'm not too crazy about because it does take longer to go up and down constantly. Our lead screw here goes down and then to the coupler, to the motor. Here we have the extrusion assembly. It is all plastic. And actually, guys, I just realized that this is the filament detector. So this wire here plugs in underneath it. I guess I didn't look at the instructions good enough. So we do have a filament detector that plugs in right there. So yeah, that's cool to see. And this is our extruder motor here. And then here we have a junction box that our main cord plugs in that distributes all the power to the different pieces like the hot end, the leveling sensor, and whatnot else. So yeah, so it is all plastic. Seems to be built pretty well. And it's nice that we do have that filament detector. Now, what I'm not crazy about is that this is all plastic. So over time it could wear. I wish they'd put maybe some kind of brass bushing in there. So this is what our hot end looks like from the back. Our rollers here. Our adjuster for the X-axis belt. The bed, it is heated, so you got a pretty nice frame there. Small rollers to adjust, and the reason they're smaller is to clear the sides here. Same thing on this side. You guys can see where this wire goes. Not too crazy about it. Again, I wish it would have traveled around here instead of beside it. So on the corners everywhere, we do have end caps to protect you from scratching yourself on the metal extrusions. Here we have the power inlet. It is fused with an on and off switch here. That's our power supply stats. It is a 360 watt, 24 volt, 15 amps max, 2040 Y channel, the belt, Y-axis motor, the end stop switch, voltage selection switch, and we do have 4 rubber feet on each corner, which are squishy. It's nice. It's going to help with vibrations. Going back to the front, we can see our hot end. There's a metal shroud. We got a heat break cooling fan on the front. On the top, we can see our heat break, the leveling sensor, and then this is where our Ptfe tubing goes in, and that's the little coupler I was talking about that you might want to put a shim in. So on the sides, we got some venting, and on this side, we have our parts cooling fan. And if we look underneath, we can see the cooling fan here that blows underneath to the nozzle. This is our heat block. It is insulated. And our level sensor here. So this is our X-axis motor here with the belt. And we have an adjuster on this end. Going down to our build volume here, we have 220 by 220 by 250 tall. A very reasonable size. I do like the build plate because it is flexible and it is magnetic, and hopefully the filament sticks good to it. We are adjustable on the Y-axis here also with this knot on the belt tension. And going down from there, we have a pretty small, looks like touchscreen LCD. So yeah, you can see my finger and how big it is. So this is where we're going to plug in our micro SD card. Not too much going on this side, but on the other side, we have a USB port to plug that cable in to go from the computer to the printer if you want to connect it. Now there is a pretty large gap here, and normally they would have like a tray or something. So you could probably make something or maybe download something to have like a little toolbox here that slides in on the channel. But other than that, guys, yeah, overall the printer looks pretty good. I do like the construction of it overall. It's all metal mostly and seems to be pretty well built.